So far, you have learned about three kinds of loops in JavaScript: for loops, while loops, and do-while loops. With all these loops, we can repeat an action a number of times. But we have two more kinds of loops in JavaScript, and we use them to iterate over the properties of an object or elements in an array. Let me show you. In this lecture, we're going to look at the for-in loop. So let's say we have an object like person with two properties, name, Mosh, and age 30. Let's say we want to display all the properties of this person object. That's when we use the for-in loop. So for, now in parentheses, unlike the for loop that you learned about earlier, we don't have three parts. So we don't have that initial expression followed by semicolon, a condition followed by the increment part. It looks a little bit different. Let me show you. So we have let key in person. So in every iteration, this key variable in the loop will hold the name of one of the properties in this person object. Let me show you. So here I'm going to do a simple console.log of key, save the changes. So in the first iteration, key is name, and in the second iteration, it is age. Now, what if you want to display the value of each property next to it? Well, earlier I told you that there are two ways to access the properties of an object. We can use the dot notation, which looks like this, person.name, or we can use the bracket notation. So person, square brackets, the name of the target property as a string. Earlier I told you that we use the bracket notation when we don't know ahead of time, at the time of writing code, what property we're going to access. Perhaps the name of the target property is calculated at runtime. Here is a real example. When we iterate over the properties of the person object, in each iteration, the value of key is going to be different. So here we can use the dot notation to display the value of this property. In other words, we can do something like this, because we don't have a property called key in the person object. So that's when we use the bracket notation. So we add square brackets and pass key as the name of the target property. Now let me delete this stuff here, save the changes. So you can see the value of name is Mosh and the value of age is 30. So this is the for-in loop, and we use it to iterate over the properties of an object. We can also use this to iterate over an array, but it's not an ideal way. In the next lecture, I'm going to show you a better way, but let's see how that works before we finish this lecture. So I'm going to define an array called colors with three values: red, green, and blue. Now we can use the for-in loop to iterate over this array. So for let index in colors, note that I named this loop variable index because in each iteration, this index variable will be set to the index of one of the elements in this array. So it's going to be 0, 1, and 2. Let's take a look. So console.log index. Save the changes. So we get 0, 1, and 2. Now, if you want to get the element at the given index, once again, we use the square bracket notation. So, comma, colors of index. Save the changes. And now we can see each element in our colors array. Now, starting from ECMAScript 6 or ES6, which is the modern version of JavaScript, we have a new kind of loop that is called for-of loop. And that is an ideal way to iterate over arrays. And that's what you're going to learn in the next lecture.